Welcome to the Onco PT podcast, where you'll learn from oncology experts, practitioners, and patients to help you on your journey to become a confident and competent Onco PT. Here's your host, Elise Cantu.
Hey Onco PT, and welcome back to this episode of the Onco PT podcast. Now, you've heard me talk about on the podcast previously about the Cowtown Oncology Nursing Symposium, which is my local ONS chapter's conference that they do annually. And every year they bring out these amazing guests. You've actually already heard from one on the podcast earlier this year, but today I am supremely privileged to invite back another speaker from the 2025 Cowtown Oncology Nursing Symposium to talk about something that literally had the audience both in tears, Thandi, I don't know if you remember this, in tears, but also on our feet at the end of our session, which was so cool. And so I'm so pleased to introduce you to Thandi Montgomery, who is the founder of ThandiMonet.com. She is a breast cancer survivor and now is a breast cancer advocate in our communities. And I'm so excited to have her today. Thandi, welcome to the Onco PT podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be here.
I am so thrilled that you said yes, first of all. As I mentioned, so you spoke at this year's Cowtown Oncology Nursing Symposium. And every year, which I don't know if you've been before, Thandi, but they do a really good job of, they usually have a session or two that you just walk away and you're like, oh, that was so good. Like, I needed that.
Wow.
As a healthcare professional I needed to hear that message. Well, that was your session this year, my friend. So can we talk about a little bit about you and what you're doing these days?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you so much for that feedback. I appreciate it. I take pride into making sure that every audience, every chance that I get to walk the stage, that I leave them with something. And so thank you so much for that feedback. It was indeed an honor to be there. And I would say for me, life after cancer, is different now. I would say that now I have the privilege of really owning and running the Thandi Monet LLC. And our whole goal, our whole mission in life is to help women and men shift from existing to living. And I feel as though from my experience with my cancer journey, I was just existing, Elise, just, on that hamster wheel, just existing. But now, once you see that life can be snatched away from you, even at a young age, I realize that it's time for me to live and help others along the way.
I even have chills now. We haven't gotten to the meat and potatoes of our conversation, Thandi, but that shift from just existing to really living, I think, and especially in light of the past few years and what we collectively have gone through, I think this timing is really appropriate. What was kind of that shift for you to realize first that you were kind of existing, like you said, and moving from that point of, I feel like this is where I'm at, to now living, as you say?
Yes. I would say before 2021, on paper, you would have thought that I was thriving. I was a marketing executive, had been in the industry for over 15 years, was able to work on amazing brands. I was married for 14 years at that time. The kids were ages 8 and 5. So I was a soccer mom, doing everything that I thought was great. But in 2021, there was a plot twist. And it was November 1st, 2021. And at that point, I was living healthy. I was living my best life. But again, I was always taught to be proactive when it comes to your health. And so every month, at least, I would do my breast exams to see and make sure nothing had changed. And so in August of 2021, that's when something felt different. And instead of ignoring it, as easy as that would have been, I decided, let me take action. Let me really figure out what's going on. And so kind of fast forward 3 months, I was diagnosed with invasive ductal carcinoma at 38 years old. And I was like, wow, this was not a part of my 5-year plan, but let's figure out, how do we get through this? And after going through that journey, it was supposed to be 2 months. I was supposed to have a double mastectomy and then reconstructive surgery and get back on to life. But we found that the cancer had spread from my breast to my lymph nodes. And so that 2-month journey was actually 12 months. And so at least during that 12-month journey, I decided to take some time off of work because advertising, as much as I love it, is very stressful, and stress
Yeah,
exacerbates the cancer journey as well. And so I
totally.
took some time off, and during that 12-month span, at least, that's when I began to figure out who is Thandi at the core. So once you begin to lose the things that define you as a woman, I lost the boobs, I lost the hair, the eyebrows, all of
Right.
that. It's like, wow, when I looked at the mirror, I didn't recognize the person staring back, but there was something. I was like, wow, well, who are you without all of that? Who are you without the title? Who are you without all of that? And so I took some time and I did a lot of reflection, whether I was in my infusion chair, getting radiation, waiting for the doctor. I was like, what is this thing called life all about? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is it? And that really helped me to understand that it's important to love as long as you can, enjoy life as long as you can, make every moment count, because in a heartbeat it can be taken away from you. And
Yeah.
in those moments, I learned how to enjoy slowing down and listening to the birds chirp. I enjoyed really seeing the seasons change. I never paid attention to that because I was always traveling or going here and going there. But I finally slowed down to listen to and observe the things that really mattered. And that's when I realized, wow, I wasn't living, I was just existing. Now, what can I do about it now?
Once you had this kind of reframing in your mind of,
Hmm.
okay, this is where I've been.
Yeah.
I don't like, I don't like how I've been existing, and then
Hmm.
fully leaning into living, like, what were some of those changes that you found yourself implementing of like, note, you said noticing the seasons change. Like,
Yes.
now is such a perfect time because I mean, right, like we're in Texas, we're
Yes.
into spring, it's about to be
Uh-huh.
summer like tomorrow basically.
Exactly.
Like what are some of those things that, again, they're small, but they're so, so powerful. Like
They're
these are
so
the big things,
powerful.
right? These are the
Yes,
big things.
yes, yes. And I can't take credit. I had a village. I have to say, when you go through something traumatic like that, it's important that you surround yourself with the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And so with my village, of course, I had my family, I had my coworkers, my team of doctors, and I did a lot of therapy, Elise. My therapist became my
I
friend.
do.
And even when it came to physical therapy, like everyone that was a part of my team was so incredible, and
Oh, I
I
love that.
felt as though they were family. I really believe that. So I would go to PT and she would say, Tandi, you're making progress. This is your baseline. You're almost there. And so even though it was a very difficult time, the
Right.
people that were assigned to my life during that moment, they were just like godsend. It was amazing. It
Mm.
was amazing. And so therapy really helped, because a lot of times people think that cancer is just a physical journey. It is
Right.
physical, yes, but a lot of it is mental. And so
Right.
she helped me to reframe my thoughts. She taught me about behavioral therapy. She taught me about emotional brain training. How do you train your brain to understand the reality, but also say, well, instead of saying, oh, I have to go through chemo again, say, yes, every drop of chemo is giving me another opportunity to live. And so it
Ooh.
was things like that was so prevalent then as well as
Mm-hmm.
now. Like, how do you emotionally train your brain to say, this is the reality, but let's focus on how can we make sure that we're being positive as well.
Right. Right. And
Hmm.
tuning in, it sounds like, doing a reframe of kind of, okay,
Yes.
what am I dealing with right now? And not necessarily, because I don't want the listener to be like, just be happy. That's not at all what we're saying here, right?
No,
That's
no.
not what Tandi is saying. But how can we reframe, um, through maybe a different lens of like, what is
Yes.
the current reality that we're experiencing?
Yes,
Love that.
yes, yes. And I had to learn how to give myself space and grace. And to your point, Elise, it's like, how do we experience and express all of the feelings? How do we experience it? How do we
Mm,
give space for anger? How do we give space for sadness? How do we give space for all of the emotions? Because all of the emotions matter, and you don't want to suppress them, because if you suppress something over time, if you don't address it, it will explode. And so it's very important that we don't fall into the toxic positivity, as you mentioned.
mm-hmm,
It's like,
mm-hmm.
how do we say, right now, I'm having a bad moment, but I'm not going to allow this to be a bad day. Right now, I'm scared
Mm,
about the diagnosis, but I know that somehow, some way, this is going to work together for my good. I don't understand it now, but something is going to happen. Something good is going to happen from this. But giving
Mm-hmm.
yourself that
Mm-hmm.
space to really address and feel and cry if you have to. I cried so many nights and so many days. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, something good has to happen from this.
So not only did you take yourself on this journey, but you're now also helping others through
Yeah.
this journey. And that was a big part of your conversation at Cowtown, was like speaking to us in the audience. You know, it was primarily
Yes.
nurses. There were two PTs. It was me and my coworker in the audience. And so like, how did you get from this is my journey to now I'm helping others on this journey?
Yes, the healing process, I realize, is not about you. It's not just about you. As you
Ooh.
heal, you have to give others permission to heal as well. And so,
Mm-hmm.
how does that look? It looks different for everyone. And so, as a breast cancer advocate, with me being able to travel and speak and to be able to have courses. So, I have a course on how to teach people how to tell their story and heal through
Wow.
creativity. And so, a lot of that happened, a lot of those ideas that I'm doing right now, it happened in the infusion chair. And so I would literally take my laptop and I'm writing ideas. I'm like, this is not the end. This is not the end. I'm like, Thandi, you better push through. And
Mm-hmm.
even when we took the 500 videos and photos, we did photo shoots because I realized that how do I use my journey? How do I use these 12 months of uncertainty, of ups and downs to help somebody else? And so we had that foresight to figure out this is not the end. So how do we use the marketing skills? How do we tell the story and help others as I heal?
Wow. So now that you've taken this healing journey and you are kind of giving, not that we need permission, but sometimes we need
Hmm.
permission. Sometimes we need someone to
Yeah.
tell us, like, hey, it's okay to do this. Like,
Hmm.
actually, you should be doing this a little bit. As you're
Absolutely.
now working with others, are you working primarily with fellow breast cancer survivors? Are you working with healthcare professionals? Like, who are you working with these days, Tondi?
Absolutely. So I have different partnerships with cancer organizations. I have
Mm-hmm.
partnerships with pharmaceutical companies. I have partnerships with oncologists as well to help them with their marketing. And how do you basically take the language and make it so that patients can understand it,
Oh my
right?
God,
And then
amazing.
and then
Yes.
also just really coaching other cancer patients. So people call me all the time, Tony, I need advice. What do you do? And so whether it's me on the
Mm-hmm.
phone with them and asking the right questions to the doctors. And so it's through different lenses. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, I have partnerships with even colleges as well. So, I was at Dartmouth a month ago, really talking to their students and really providing the patient voice so they can understand that this is reality and this is someone who's gone through the journey and this is how she looks or this is how they look. So it's very
Yeah.
important that I'm being able to cast a wide net and be able to make an impact.
Very cool. Now, one of the things that you talked about at Cowtown was this ride framework. Can
Yes.
you tell us, okay, what is this ride framework, first of all?
Yes. And so I would say, as I was going through my journey, again, my team of doctors and PTs and therapists, they were so instrumental. They made an impact. And I learned a lot from them. They tell me that they
Mm-hmm.
learned from me, but I learned a lot from them, even beyond the medical component. I built relationships with them. And so as I began to think about the lessons learned, I was like, wow, what are some things that I can take from them? And I learned over
Mm-hmm.
80 lessons. Some of them were personal, some of them were professional. But
Yeah.
out of those 80 lessons, at least four of those lessons were from my team of doctors. And that's where the RIDE framework came
Love that.
from.
That is amazing. Okay. So tell us, what are the four lessons that
Yes,
make
yes.
up the ride framework?
Yes, yes. So RIDE, the R stands for resilience. And, when I think about my team of doctors and the nurses, they just always showed up with strength, even on the hardest days. And they made sure that they saw me as Tandi, the person, and not just Tandi, the patient. And that
Yeah,
makes a big difference because I've heard horror stories. I've heard a lot of things that have happened in terms of um, especially people of color being dismissed in the healthcare
absolutely.
industry. Has been very difficult,
Absolutely.
but I believe that yes, it does happen. And I'm just so grateful that my team of doctors, they saw me again as a person and not just a patient. And so that to me was strength. That to me was resilience for them to come together and figure out how do we make the right treatment plan for Thandi, not just a breast cancer survivor who had invasive ductal carcinoma stage 1B, but how do we come together and do what's right for Thandi? And that was a
Mm-hmm.
very important lesson learned. Yes.
Ooh.
So that's R. That's just the R.
That's number one. Okay.
That's number one. And I would say the I is for impact. How do we, every action matters, big or small. And so as healthcare professionals, it's important to make an impact. Everything that you do from, writing in the chart, from saying the diagnosis, or from just showing that you care, that plays a huge role in someone's journey, because it's hard enough, at least, to hear the words you have cancer. It's hard enough to go through a diagnosis, but when you have doctors who care and they're willing and ready to make that impact, it goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
It goes a long way.
I want to pull out something you said. We talk about, obviously, of course, every interaction that we have with every patient makes that impact.
Yes.
But it's even smaller than that. Like how you choose to show up in those moments. Like you said, when you're opening up that charting, and even as you're documenting in the chart, like that's having an impact. And I think that's, again, I pull it out because I think the PT who's listening right now is like, documentation. They're probably thinking of a note that they have to finish. But like, this is an opportunity to show up and have a positive or otherwise impact on that patient's, not just interaction with you, but the entire healthcare system in their oncology care journey. And that, I think that's kind of a big reframe. It's like, oh, we need to think about that, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And just thinking about my own PT, like I said, she was just so incredible. And just again, when I would go in for the stretches and she would give me some exercises to do at home, she was just very motivational. And I would say, as a PT, I want your audience to understand it's more than just the stretching, it's more than just the physical component. What you say, your words of affirmation, your smile when you greet them to come in, that makes a big difference. It really, really does. Like, I'll never forget her face. I'll never forget the impact that my PT made after I had the double mastectomy. So if you can imagine, you're going in there with a loss already, right? And so how do you figure out, as a PT, how do you pour back into them, because they're going through so much as it is. And so it's like, okay, as your patient is on the table and you're stretching them, what can you say to them? How can you smile? How can you reaffirm that they're on the right path and the decisions they made were the right decisions? And so your job is bigger than what you think. You have such a huge impact on their journey, whether it's 3 months of physical therapy, 3 days of physical therapy, you have the opportunity to make that impact.
Mic drop, like boom, boom right there. And y'all, we still have 2 letters left in this framework. Like, we're not even done yet. Keep going,
Absolutely,
Thandi, keep going.
absolutely, absolutely. So I just wanted to pause and let them know, like, it's so important, and it's more than just showing up. It's more than just seeing, oh, I have 5 patients today, I have 10 patients today. No, this is someone on the other side of that table. It's a person with feelings. It's a person who's going through a lot, and you have that opportunity right then and there to make a difference. And I would say the third letter is D, determination. So how do you stay committed? How do you push forward and never give up? Everyone is going through something in life. It doesn't matter. Everyone is going through something. You're either going through, you're in it, or you're coming out. So it's cyclical, right? And so whether you are in the healthcare profession, whether you're on the patient side, how do you allow determination to help drive you forward? And that's important, because sometimes giving up seems a lot easier than pushing forward, but determination is a driver. It really is a driver.
I think that's also, listening to you talk about determination, Thandi, I think it's also really impactful for, burnout is a really big issue,
Ooh,
among
yes.
lots of industries, but especially in healthcare. And I think it takes a lot of determination to, like, when you're going through really challenging times as part of being a healthcare professional, it's easy to check out and not be present. And really, I think that impact that we're talking about, it almost takes that determination to stay present and showing up and be like what's the word I'm looking for? What's the phrase I'm looking for? But like locked in to
Yes.
be able to show up with a very intentional impact with your
Hmm.
patients too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou to that point, Elise, is, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And
Yeah.
so again, that goes back into the impact and determination to say, this is not just a job. I'm not just showing up today to help
Hmm.
someone physically, but how do I want people to feel when they leave my office? How do I want them to remember me in their journey? And so I think it's bigger than what you think.
Okay, what's the last lesson of the ride framework, Thandi?
Yes, the last lesson is E for empathy. And as we talked about earlier, you have to understand that it's bigger than just a patient. It's a person. It's a person with feelings. It's a person with a family. It's a person who's going through some of the hardest moments of their life. And so if you think about that, I think about my oncologist. Maybe that was her 500th time telling someone that year that they had cancer, but that was my first time hearing it. Right. And so it's important that you have empathy and know that, okay, yes, I've said this 500 times, but let me make sure that my bedside manners is on point, because this is this poor girl's first time hearing it,
Right,
and this is routine for me, but this is not routine for her. And so how do
right,
I make it in terms of making sure that I am empathetic? Maybe I haven't gone through it before, but I understand the impact, and so let me
right,
be empathetic. Let me slow down. Let me not just rush to the next patient, because once I say this news, let me just sit with her and say, I know you're going through a lot. This is not the news that you wanted. What can I help you with, or how can I help? Instead of just saying, okay, you've been diagnosed with breast cancer. This is your treatment plan. I'll see you in a week. That's
yeah,
Yeah, this is life altering news.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
understanding that it's a person who's just hearing this news, it's so important. And also thinking about PTs, when someone comes into the office, I mean, they're in a condition that mentally and physically that you can't fathom. You can't fathom.
mm-mm.
And so instead of just saying, okay, here's your treatment, here's your plan, here's your stretches for the day, take the time, ask about their dog, ask about their family, and be empathetic. And you never know what type of impact that your empathy can make on some person.
Yeah, yeah. And again, you may be working with your 500th person
Yes,
diagnosed with cancer. This is their first likely diagnosis
yes.
of cancer, and
Hmm.
hopefully their only ever
Exactly,
diagnosis of
exactly.
cancer. And, again, really showing up very intentionally with empathy to
Hmm.
make space to sit. I think that's something, especially as healthcare professionals, as PTs, like we're in a hamster wheel a lot of the times of,
Yeah.
all right, gotta get through this patient so I can get through the next patient so I can get to
Hmm.
this and this and this. And it takes effort, and it takes the time and a little bit of planning on our part to get off the hamster wheel
Hmm.
and to sit
Yes.
with someone and have the conversations. Sometimes they're
Yes.
hard conversations, but sometimes, like you said, it's checking in with them and asking about their dog. I love
Yes.
hearing about my patients, like kids and grandkids.
Mhm.
Those
Mhm.
are those human connections that we can be building as healthcare professionals to really make that human connection with
Yes.
the human in front of
Yes.
us.
Yes. Absolutely.
We're talking about the ride framework, Thandi.
Mhm.
And it's really wonderful to hear, like, this is a way that we can kind of structure our approach to working with a person. But you and I were talking off air before we started this interview about
Mhm.
this is part of self-care for us as
Yes.
healthcare professionals, because we
Mhm.
can read all these books and be like, here's how I'm going to be a better PT or whatever. And sometimes I think we are really good at caring so deeply for our patients that we forget to care for
Mhm.
ourselves, or we
Mhm.
forget the connection between when we care for ourselves, we're then better able to show up and care for our patients. How
Absolutely.
do you infuse and talk about self-care as such an important part of your work when working with
Mhm.
healthcare professionals?
Yes, and self-care is so important. It's something that it's often overlooked. And self-care doesn't just have to be a mani-pedi. Self-care is bigger than that, you know? And so it's like
Yeah.
finding ways, how do you fill your cup? How do you
Hmm.
make sure that, because you can't pour from an empty cup. Once your cup is empty, you can't pour from it. And so how do we intentionally make sure that we're not to the point of burnout, and then we say, oh, I have to fill my cup? But how do we make sure
Right.
on a daily
Right.
basis, whether it's, going outside in your background and grounding and earthing and walking and just taking
Hmm.
in that nature, whether it's having a cup of tea, whether it's talking to a friend, doing a walk and chat, what does that look like for you? And so I always
Right.
recommend that for healthcare providers, create a menu. Right. So if you have 5 minutes, here's some things that I can do in 5 minutes of self care. If I have 30 minutes, let's go to that menu. Here's what I can do. If I have a whole day. And so, therefore, you're not thinking about it, but you can go to that menu, that self care menu, and pull your items that you want to do for self care.
I feel like I was just struck by lightning, Tandi. Like,
Yes, have your own self
especially,
care menu.
oh my gosh. Because then also, I'm thinking at the end of the day, after I've been working, like, I'm tired. I mean,
Yes,
at the end of the day, we're tired.
yes.
We don't want to be making decisions. That's one of the things that
Hmm.
I really don't like when I come home and I like have to make more decisions. I don't want to do
Yes,
it.
yeah.
But pre-planning that
Hmm.
menu, so then you just have
Hmm.
to say, I have 10 minutes. Here's what I
Yes,
know I will enjoy doing and what
yes.
is going to pour back into. Oh,
Yes,
Tandi,
yes,
Tandi.
yes. I'm
Oh
telling
my
you, it
God.
is a lifesaver. So I tell that to healthcare providers as well as patients, because you're right. You don't want to make another decision. And so if you can
Yeah.
pre-plan and have your menu, your 5 minute, 10 minute, 30 minute,
Oh my
maybe an
God.
hour. And so then you can say, okay, this is what I want. And before you know it, it's going to be ingrained in your brain. So you don't have to go to that
Mm-hmm.
list anymore. But you can say, listen, I haven't filled my cup today. I am going to, like I said, go outside and just listen to the birds chirp or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. It's so important that we take care of ourselves and avoid that burnout phase, because it's easy to forget about us, and
Mm-hmm.
because you're caring for so many people.
Oh, I am blown away by the menu idea, Tandi. That is
Yeah,
genius. And
thank
again,
you.
like,
Thank you.
what a great way to take away some of that decision fatigue
Mm-hmm.
that at the end of the day, like, a lot of us are feeling and just don't even want to. You're just taking that one decision out of the equation
Yes,
and just having that
exactly.
pre-selected. Oh,
Yes,
oh my
exactly. And I would
God.
say the last thing, at least, because
Yeah.
sometimes we forget. So if we could schedule time with ourselves, and whether it's daily, whether it's weekly, just putting it on your calendar, like me time or self-care
Right.
time, so that when that alarm goes off, you wouldn't be late to a meeting with your boss. You wouldn't forego your kid's soccer game. You would show up. And so just like you
Right.
show up for your boss, you show up for your family, show up for yourself, because guess what? When you take care of yourself, you're taking care of others.
Ugh. I love doing these podcast episodes, Tandi, because as I mentioned
Hmm.
previously, like, I really like talking with a bunch of people. I
Yes.
also feel like I'm supposed to listen to the podcast episode. Like, there's a reason why these get scheduled on my calendar the way they do, and this is absolutely what I needed today. Oh
Wow.
my
Wow.
God.
Yes.
For the healthcare professional who is
Hmm.
listening right now and saying,
Hmm.
I love what Tandi is saying. I recognize the importance of it, but I kind of don't know where to start. I
Hmm.
don't maybe know how to implement the right framework or, prioritizing self-care. What would you say to them?
Hmm. I would say, self-reflection is key. Sometimes it's important to quiet the noise and slow down the hustle and bustle, and make time for yourself. So whether it's on your ride home, whether it's before you go to bed and you're doing some yoga or breath work, whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
find that time to slow down, to figure out what am I doing right now in life? Am I making the impact? Am I being resilient? Am I being determined? Am I showing empathy? And so maybe taking those four key pillars and maybe saying, okay, this is where I am when it comes to resilience, and kind of grading yourself. Do I give myself an A, a B, or C, or D, or whether it's a score of 1 to 10? Maybe just going through and doing some reflection and saying, okay, if I am, when it comes to the empathy bucket, if I'm a 5, what can I do to get to a 6 or 7 in the upcoming
Mm-hmm.
weeks? And so just coming up with a
Mm-hmm.
plan, just like we come up with our 5-year plan, we come up with our yearly goals. Maybe the RIDE framework can be just that overarching category that they look at in terms of how they can get better in their profession.
Right, right.
Hmm.
And I really appreciate, I want to make sure that the listener clues into this.
Yeah.
Doing the self-reflection, but then starting with one area. I'm an
Yes.
all or nothing kind of gal. And so I know, like, because I think we did a similar exercise at Cowtown, right? Where we kind of
Yes.
rated ourselves. And
Hmm.
I instantly was like, okay, I have these areas that I need to work on. It was like, no, 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 no. Pick one
Just
and
pick
start with
one.
one thing that you're
Yes.
going to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. 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 Pick one. Pick one, and then also have an accountability partner. So is there someone you
Ooh.
can talk
Mm-hmm.
to and say, okay, is there another fellow PT that I can talk to about this,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can help me to stay accountable? And as I mentioned before, give yourself space and grace. This is your first time. So just because you learn the framework doesn't mean you have to implement it overnight. It's going to take time. And
Right.
so, yes, I would say that reflection, space, and grace, and have an accountability partner are three key areas to start with.
Ah, excellent. For the listener who is saying, I need more of Thandi in my life, where can people follow you and connect with you?
Yes, so thank you for that. If you want to, have your next motivational speaker or coach or whatever it may be, you can go to my website, www.thandimonee, and that's spelled ThandiMonee.com. And you can go there. There's the affirmations on the website, there are recipes on the website, and there's just so much that you can take away from it. And
Mm-hmm.
so feel free to go there. And you can also download my free e-guide. It really focuses on affirmations, positive affirmations to help you reignite and shift from existing to living, all free, that you can recite every day if you want. You can also check me out on Instagram, and that's Thandi Montgomery. Again, ThandiMonee.
We will, of course, be linking all of that in the show notes, but I did want to call out again, Thandi, your session at Cowtown was really, really impactful. My friend Tori and I, who were there, we both, because your session was like right away in the morning that day. And
Yes.
we were like, we were not expecting to cry this early in the morning of just like how overwhelmingly wonderful that message was.
Wow.
And also a really great reframe. We go to these conferences, like we go to
Hmm.
professional conferences to be like, okay, I'm going to learn about this treatment and this side effect and how, like how to be better about it. But also that kind of that opportunity to pause and
Yeah.
reflect, like we were just talking about,
Hmm.
and kind of
Hmm.
saying, how am I doing? How are things going? Where am I maybe falling short? And not to stay there of like,
Hmm.
I'm so bad at insert whatever here.
Sure.
But what's one step that I can take to maybe get a little better at that? And looking back, because we're now recording this, it's the middle of April. That
Hmm.
conference was at the beginning of March.
Hmm.
Seeing the small changes
Wow.
just from reflecting on that little card that you, like that handout card that you
Hmm.
gave,
Hmm.
and seeing like, I'm now going on walks and I'm enjoying the
Wow.
sunshine, and I'll like listen to a book. I haven't done that in years.
Hmm.
I got into a pickleball league this
Oh,
semester, y'all.
awesome.
And I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work. Highlight of my week. And just like
Wow.
all of these things, I bring these up. These are things that I am doing now
Hmm.
as a way to show up more intentionally with my patients by stepping back and taking care of myself
Wow.
first. And
Yes.
it's
Yes.
because of what Thandi has been talking about and the
Wow.
framework that you led us through. And so,
Wow.
again, it's not an overnight thing, but seeing these changes add up, Thandi, I think that's why I needed to talk to you today, because I now have that month and a half of reflection of like, oh, here's how things have been changing. Like,
Hmm.
oh, look at that progress. And I think
Wow.
sometimes I need that check-in. And I think the listener probably also is like, I need a little bit of a mile marker to see where I've been and where I'm coming today. So again, reflection,
Yes,
self-reflection, like Thandi was saying, so
absolutely.
powerful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It is an honor. I'm so grateful that you were able to take some nuggets from that and just better yourself because you're better, then your patients will be better.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Thandi, for coming on the
Yes.
podcast today. I will, of course, be
Absolutely.
linking website, your socials, and the other resources that you've mentioned. I really, really appreciate you coming on and talking to my audience today. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the listener with today before we close out our interview?
I would just like to reiterate that don't forget the impact that you make. You know, you go through years and years of school, you go through years and years of training, and sometimes the training that you get is not the emotional component. But don't forget that you have the ability to make such an impact beyond the book knowledge, beyond showing up every day. Don't forget the role that you play in countless patients' lives every day, because there's a patient like me who will remember how you made them feel, like Maya Angelou said. And so I would say, don't forget your impact and don't forget to take care of yourself.
Thandi, that was wonderful. Thank you so, so much.
Mhm.
Everybody, if you're not already following Thandi, please make sure to do that. Of course, I've linked her Instagram in the show notes. Just a treasure trove of
Mhm.
goodness and, kind of recentering and reframing and
Yes.
reflecting on
Hmm.
what you're doing as an onco PT and where can you go from here. So
Hmm.
Thandi, thank you so, so much. I've enjoyed this interview tremendously, and I
Me
cannot
too.
wait to have you back on the onco PT
Yes,
podcast again,
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
once was not enough, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your work. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Onco PT podcast. If you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, leave a rating and review, or support us on Patreon.